I'm sure that in Israel there is a reasonable compromise somewhere. I mean, I don't think the majority of Palestinians want to kill all the Jews, and I don't think the majority of the citizens of Israel want to oppress all the Palestinians. The point is that are we looking for compromises or are we looking for victory? And I think my take is that if I had more power, I could say, don't look for victory. Look for peace, for compromises, for finding solutions.
Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan Guru-Murthy, and this is the podcast in which we talk to extraordinary people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. My guest this week has some very big ideas. Carlo Rovelli is a theoretical physicist. He is an author, an opinion writer, and he's sometimes called the poet of physics. In fact, he was called that by Alan Garner. His sense of wonder obliterates the barrier between science and the arts, is the quote on the cover, because his new book is called White Holes Inside the Horizon. If you've just about got your head around the idea of black holes, this takes you to the next level. Carlo Rovelli, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, you've written a very small book about a very, very big idea. Could you, why have you approached this topic? Why have you come to this topic?
It's a book. It's a bit different from my other books. I'm not talking here about what we have understood about the world, what physics knows about the world. I'm just telling a story of the research I'm doing. So it's about an hypothesis, an idea, not something I'm certain about, or the community it's considered very, very probable. It's more for describing what it is to try to get new ideas and push the boundary of what we know a little bit further. So it's a very personal book. It's very simple. It's written in a very, very short, as you said, in a very plain way. And it's more about my own feelings, emotions, doubt, enthusiasm about a new idea that comes and is growing, has been growing for a few years, other people working on that. It's a book about doing research in theoretical physics.
How would we ever know that the hypothesis is correct? I mean, there is sort of evidence for black holes that can be observed.
Yeah.
There's no evidence for white holes.
That's correct. It might take a long time, exactly like it did a long time for black holes. Black holes for very long were exactly in the point where white holes today, namely hypothetical ideas, hypothetical possibilities. There were good reasons for taking them seriously, but no actual experiment, observation that could, give us confidence about their existence. Now, to get observation and evidence about the existence of white holes, it's, of course, impossible in principle, we could also build a machine and catch one of them. There might be one flying here just right now. The ones that exist plausibly are very small, and they interact very weakly, so they could just go by without us noticing them. So in fact, I'm completing a paper with some colleagues now on theoretically how we could build this machine and catch one. That would be a good confirmation, just finding
So
them.
it is possible that one day there will be physical
Absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't do that. But it's not possible tomorrow.
So, I mean, I say this with some trepidation because we need to get to try and explain what is a white hole. And I suppose we should start with what is a black hole.
The possible existence of black hole or white holes is predicted by the theory, by Albert Einstein theory, by general relativity, which has already predicted a spectacular list of things which we didn't believe before, like gravitational waves or the expansion of the universe, black holes. A black hole in particular is what happens when you squash a lot of matter together, sufficient amount of it, like a very big star, and the weight of this matter overwhelms everything else. So even a strong rock or a piece of iron is squeezed inside. And there's so much matter that the weight is so large that, that's what the theory, Einstein theory predicts, it all keeps falling into itself. And it produces a real hole in space. The shape is really like a hole. Imagine that here, there's a hole, go down. So there's a little bottleneck from which there's a huge space inside, a long pit where everything is falling. And this is what the theory predicts, and these things were seen. And the effect of we have a picture of black hole. It's a fantastic picture of black holes. A white hole is essentially the same thing in reverse, in the sense in which if you see something falling, when it bounces back and comes up, is the same movement in reverse, right? Something falling goes down faster and faster and faster, and something bouncing up goes up slower and slower and slower. Now, if you made a movie of a black hole, the formation of this hole, and you project it back to you will see it coming up. And that's a white hole. A white hole, it's a hole being consumed and everything inside coming out. And in the past, white holes by themselves were not taken very seriously because where does the matter inside come from, right? And the idea that seems to be working, the idea that has conquered my mind, if I can say, and I think might be real, is that a white hole are exactly produced at the end of a life of black hole. So a black hole forms, and then there's this bounce, this transition, and it comes up. And the bounce, the transition, is not predicted by Einstein theory. That's why it's a step into the unknown, because it's a quantum mechanical effect.
So why is there an end to a black hole? Why is there a bounce point?
Because we know, in fact Einstein knew, that his theory, general relativity, it's not the end of the story, because there's quantum mechanics. So there are quantum mechanical effects on this shape of space that changes. And understanding this quantum effect on gravity, on space, it's an open problem. It's a problem of quantum gravity. And I believe it's the most interesting problem in physics today, because it's the quantum properties of space, the quantum properties of time. Because, Einstein theory is the understanding that gravity is the deformation of space. This tube that forms, that's gravity. The deformation of the speed at which a clock ran is gravity, and near black hole time is distorted. So Einstein taught us that understanding gravity is understanding how space and time are deformed in this way. Now, the quantum feature of that, the way quantum mechanics affect that, is how space and time themselves become quantum. So when we imagine, we figure out in our head this formation of black hole, and then this bounce coming back. The bounce itself is this quantum phenomena that takes us from the falling of black hole to the sort of anti-falling, which is a white hole.
And if white holes exist,
yeah,
what's the significance of that?
They might actually play a major part in the universe, and it might even be that we have already seen them, because there is a mysterious thing in the universe, which is what the astronomers have observed, which is dark matter. Around galaxies, there are this big halo of like a huge powder cloud of something, which astronomers call dark matter. We see the effect of it, we see the gravity of it, we see how it attracts stuff, but we don't see it. We don't see it with light. Light goes through without being affected. And so, in technical word, it interacts, but only gravitationally. It doesn't interact electromagnetically, because light is an electromagnetic phenomenon. So it might be that dark matter is many of these little black holes. And that's an hypothesis, a possibility. There are other possible interpretations of dark matter. So understanding black holes could lead to understanding dark matter, namely understanding a major component of the universe. So not be a small part of the universe, a big part of the universe. But to me, what attracts me, it's because it changes the way we think about space and time. What I like in science is when it pushes us to change the world, change the way we understand the world. So there's a simple, basic way of understanding the world, first of all, before everything else, before politics and love and literature, which is just a big space and time passes and things happening in it. No, even that might be wrong, because space itself might be quantum mechanical and may behave strangely.
So the way we think of the world and each other and our interactions is always too simple, isn't it? Because if you...
Yeah, that I think is the main lesson of not just physics, but science in general. Major science has this capacity, which is its strength. And to me, what makes it fascinating, to take our worldview and come to us and say, look, it's not like that. It's different. I mean, like that is okay for your everyday life, but if you want to understand better, you better change your mind and think differently. And realize that, you know, the Earth is round, it spins around the sun, that animals and humans have the same ancestors, and so on.
So how does that change the way you look at the world and your own life and issues? I mean, you're very vocal on different issues. Right now, that you've been talking about, the possibility of global catastrophe and war and the Middle East conflict. Do you apply the sort of complexity of science to the way you think about these sorts of problems? Because most people don't. They see them as A, B, C. They see things as logical. And what they think of as logical is often too simple and straightforward.
I do, in one manner in particular, which is this. The greatest lesson I got from life is that we start off from a perspective. And then we think, we travel, we read, and we realize that our perspective is partial. I was 16 when first time I started traveling alone, and it was the time of the Cold War, the height moment of the Cold War. And the planet was really ideologically split in two. And I was completely immersed in a narrative about what was going on. And this kid, 16, I mean, I was very young. I met a friend who came in from the other side of the Iron Curtain, as we called it at the time, and kept telling, come and see. And I went. And I realized two things. First of all, that life was completely different to what we were told in the West.
Where did you go?
Sofia. That was my first, and then
Bulgaria,
Bulgaria, and then Bucharest. Was nothing to do with the narration here, which was a big shock. But another big shock, perhaps even more telling, is that what in that part of the world people thought, it involved everybody, about the West, was equally completely wrong. So the world was split in two, with two narratives about what was going on the other side, which were just fake, profoundly fake. And now, I think, 40 years later, more, we're in the same situation. The world is split in pieces where we have profoundly different narrative of what is going on. And the most stupid things one can do is try to understand which one is the right one. Because that's not the point. The point is that that there are different narratives, and unless we find a way to look from the other side, the only solution is to massacre one another, which is what we do regularly. Every few years, humans massacre one another. And could there be a more stupid thing to do in life than massacring one another?
So when did you decide that, or did you go into physics because you thought that's where the answers were that you were seeking?
I never thought that the answers of human problems are in physics. I thought that some answers or some questions. I was very curious about how the universe works, but also how is possible that our mind understand the universe. My curiosity in physics was how could it be that we have written these mathematical equations that seems to work so fantastically well to describe the world? What I was a kid in the 60s. Science was seen with incredible awe in the 60s. You know, that's when man went to the moon, and so the sense was in science there was some new knowledge, which was true. There was a new knowledge. I wouldn't think it's the fundamental knowledge of humankind, of course. I mean, knowledge is vast. It's at all levels. We describe reality in physical terms, in biological terms, in chemical terms, in psychological terms, in social terms, in philosophical terms. These all form all together our understanding of the world, and they make sense if there is if we connect one another. I don't think they're in contradiction with one another. They are again, different perspective, different flash of lights in this big thing, which is reality, which we only understand at pieces and bits and pieces of it. And I went into physics because I wanted to understand more, but also I went very late into physics. My passion to physics was I was late 20s, not before. Also because the political side of me, which was much more prominent when I was a kid, was disappointed by the difficulty of changing the world that my generation confronted us. We started off by saying, okay, so this world is horrible. I mean, there's injustice, there's war, there is hypocrisy, there is all possible horrors, people starving, and so on and so forth. And we're going to make a better world without weapons, without borders, without authority, without injustice. And very rapidly we realized that the majority of people did not want that. And there was a period in my life of big disappointment, the sense of lack of power on the world. And then at that point, my curiosity towards science sort of exploded because I found into science ways to change the world, revolutions. I mean, Einstein changed the world, or Darwin changed the world in a way that, or Copernicus, right? They changed civilization profoundly. The day we understand with Darwin that you and I, not only you and I have common ancestors, for sure. If you go your mother, and my father, they're making love, the two of them, for sure. It's fantastic. I mean, we are cousin. But not just you and I, also you and I in the little bag flying there. Even the plants, we have common ancestors. That changes the understanding of what we are, right? We're part of this funny family, which is the biosphere, in which all these living things are all connected, they're all a big family. Which what it implies about the need of one, the actual need of one for the other, which is real. So this is science changing profoundly the sense we have about ourselves. Or Copernicus, who teaches us that the universe is so huge and we are just irrelevant little corner. Knowledge, it's power, and we see it, way from atomic bombs to intelligence used in wars. And knowledge is makes ourselves, determines what we think about the world and what we are. And so knowledge is important. And I think that my work as an intellectual is just, may put little bricks in this big thing, which is construction of knowledge. Many of my colleagues got obsessed by the idea of writing the final theory of everything. Okay, the universal theory that covers everything. I think that's wrong. Because who are we for writing the final theory of everything? I mean, the world is full of mysteries, and it's going to remain so. We shouldn't aim at the end of the physics. We should aim at understanding the little thing we don't understand now, because we don't know the quantum properties of gravity, or what happens inside the black hole. Deep inside the black hole, we see the matter falling to these holes, going back to the deep part of the black hole, and then we don't know, because Einstein's theory doesn't work there anymore because of quantum mechanics.
I mean, do you think that is a general problem with science and scientists, that they want to present certainty, and that science often presents itself as the great contrast to everything else going on in the world, which is precise, known, and certain, when it's not?
I think that the idea itself of certainty is wrong. The idea of finding reliable information or a reliable thing we know is right, but reliable does not mean certain. And that's a big difference. The big difference is that if something is reliable, you might rely on it because it's reliable, but you might always say, well, may be careful, okay? If I tell you the best way of going from here to Manchester is do this road, you trust me because I know I'm British, I know the thing, I'm reliable. But maybe there was a road accident, that was wrong, the wrong way to go. So if you have your mind open that, okay, I follow these reliable things, but maybe there is something else that I don't know, then your mind is open and you can find another thing. So certainly it's not the thing we want. And I think there's a subtle point, because it's nevertheless true that very often science gives you the most reliable information you have given our level of knowledge, right? If you get pneumonia, I hope you don't, but today you know who to ask, who give you the most reliable information about how to get rid of it. And for sure, if you get penicillin, or I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, but doctors know, that's the point, they're going to give you a pill and you're fine with 99 probability, right? While without that, you have a very high probability of dying. So it's super powerful. It's super reliable. Listen to doctors, believe them, but remember that there may be something else that they don't know, we haven't discovered, and there's always this, there is something new. So this openness, and knowing that our knowledge is partial. So scientist is not the guru that knows certainty. He's the poor guy that has the best available knowledge and tells you about the best available knowledge.
A couple of times in this conversation, you referred to this moment in our history as sort of quite, well, potentially catastrophic.
Yes.
Why do you feel that we are now in a similar position to 1915?
We are in a similar position of 1915 because exactly like in 1915, we are building a huge amount of weapons. We are decoupling economies. We are separating the world in areas. And these areas are developing narrative of each other being horrible. That's exactly what is going on. And the way I see the situation today, and I might be wrong, but I see the situation like that, and there are a lot of people that see the situation like that in the economy, in the politics, in finance, in the academia, is that what is happening is very simple, in my opinion. The planet has been dominated by Britain for a century, and then by the United States for another century. These dominations were supported by a major economical power. I mean, Britain at some point was producing something like 80% of the goods of the planet. And the West, together, the United States with their allies, were producing also 80% of the economy of the planet just a few decades ago. And now, fortunately, I would say, prosperity has spread enormously. So the non-Western world has grown and grown and grown. It's very good. Billions of people have been taken out of misery and getting to a decent light. And this has rebalanced. Now the economy of the West is less than half the total economy, substantially less than half, which means that power is spread, but the West is military dominating and is trying to keep its military domination with a force. And the way I see it, and again, I may be wrong, is that the West is at a choice. Either it accepts that, democracy, it starts practicing what it preaches, namely sharing powers with the others, or it pretends, as it's doing now, to keep power on the planet, but it doesn't have the economical force anymore to do it only militarily, which means that we're going toward more and more proxy wars. So we're seeing more and more military confrontation, and a century which might be as horrible as the previous one, where 100 million people killed, right? The First and Second World War. So we're risking that, plus a nuclear catastrophe, which go on top of climate change and everything else. So I'm not very optimistic, because it seems to me the main people blind in the West. They don't listen to the rest of the world. The West keep being put in minority politically, for instance, United Nations, economically, culturally. The cultural influence of the West is decreasing all over. There's China, there's India, there's Brazil, there's Indonesia, there is Iran, there's Africa, there is South Africa. I mean, and yet, Washington keep talking about the U.S.-led world order, and how can everybody challenge that? Well, people are challenging that. So either the West accept this challenge and share powers, or we're all going to suffer a lot, in my opinion.
If I can ask you about the current war that is dominating the airways, because you've spoken about it on social media as well. How does Israel-Palestine fit into that description of what you think is going on in the world?
Well, in many ways, of course, it's a very difficult problem that everybody's trying to solve for very long. But one way in which we can see how it fits into that is, for instance, the last vote at the United Nations General Assembly, in which overwhelming majority of countries voted in one direction, and the point was asking for truce. So the huge majority of the country of the planet asked for something. Something was not, squeeze the Palestinians or take away Israel, or was just stop the weapons for a moment, only that. And an absolute minority of the countries of the planet has its way against the huge majority of the ground that have bigger guns. I think that's a super unstable situation, where an incredible minority imposes its will to everybody else because it has biggest weapons. It might last if behind the biggest guns there's a huge economy and a solid power, but there isn't anymore. So I think either the West leads the way toward democracy internationally, or it is pretend to keep this, we are few, but we are the boss of everybody else, because we are democracies, which is a strange argument, because also India is a democracy, or Brazil is a democracy, right? Indonesia is a democracy. And if this bossing everybody else is continuing, I see disaster. Now, Israel is not just that, of course. There's a lot of other things which are going on. It's a very difficult situation. We all know the complexity, and each of us has a different ideas. But it's also true that everybody also knows the solution, right? Which is the Oslo Agreement, the two-state situation. It's not an impossible solution. It's something where everybody had seen the solution. Let me make it clear: Israeli people are suffering horrendously. Right? Get murdered and get killed. Everybody's suffering. Let me put it this way. And I do understand that how Jews all over the world panic. It's not, and I do see anti-Semitism growing up. I'm not denying anybody's argument, but the point is that Israel is getting its way all the time because Big Dad in Washington allows it to do so. And why does it do so? Because Big Dad in Washington has to say, "I'm the boss. I'm the boss of the world," and I don't think this is going to last. And the point is it going to last violently or gently?
What do you think?
I hope with all my heart that somebody's going to be open-minded and say, okay, let's do it gently. Many power has changed in the world. Britain itself, right? It was running the world for a century. It's not running the world anymore. I mean, life in Britain is not so bad. Italy was running the world, right? Well, the Mediterranean, 2,000 years ago. We're used to having lost an empire.
I mean, what's really interesting is you said you grew up in the Cold War.
Yeah.
Where there was a genuine fear of world destruction.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all grew up thinking there was going to be a nuclear war, and there were television series about it and books about it. And that same fear doesn't really exist right now, when more and more people have got nuclear weapons, when there's more and more instability and more potential wars. It's sort of an odd paradox, isn't it?
It's a paradox which is worrying me. It's exactly this paradox which is worrying me. The fear of the nuclear catastrophe during the Cold War was real, and is exactly that fear and this awareness that gave the wisdom to the elite on both sides to avoid the wars. I mean, bad things happened. But for instance, the Cuba crisis, which is when the Russians wanted to put missiles in Cuba, and the Americans said, no way, okay? And it was very close to an open war between the Soviet Union and in fact, the advisors of both the Kennedys and Khrushchev, the other side, were pushing to start fighting. And the wisdom of both sides, they found the courage to found a compromise. And the compromise, we know historically, was that Russia would take would not put the missile in Cuba. In fact, the Russian ships were already going there, came back, and the American exchange took away the missile from Turkey. I'm sure that in Israel there is a reasonable compromise somewhere. I mean, I don't think the majority of Palestinians want to kill all the Jews, and I don't think the majority of the citizens of Israel want to oppress all the Palestinians. The point is that are we looking for compromises or are we looking for victory? And I think my take is that if I had more power, I could say, don't look for victory. Look for peace, for compromises, for finding solutions.
It's very interesting that alongside writing a book about white holes for a mass audience, you are also very happy to talk about politics in the Guardian newspaper. Why is that? Is it just that you're a human being with opinions and you like to share them, or?
Yes. First of all, I don't identify myself as a physicist, period. I'm a human being who does physics, who write papers in philosophy journals, who talks about politics. I have opinions. I'm aware of my limits, right? I talk about international politics. I'm perfectly ready to say maybe I'm wrong, just not seeing things which other people see more far away than me. Exactly like I write in this little booklet. I'm telling you about my research on white holes. I'm not sure about it. So it's curiosity, it's willingness to offer my opinion within a conversation.
And are you able to apply your worldview desires at all politically to the way you work as a scientist? I mean, you work in many countries, Italy, France, Canada. These are all obviously parts of the Western academic world. Do you cooperate with scientists or physicists in China or India or Russia?
Yes, in my group there is a Chinese and there is a person from Iran. Absolutely wonderful, and we share more idea, and we fight about. We have different opinions, of course. I have different opinions with everybody, of course. That's the point. That's exactly the point.
So do you think science has achieved or is getting towards a new world order?
Science has always been like that. Science has been it's been characterized by just don't believing in tribes fighting against one another. During the Cold War, one of the very good things that happened in the Cold War was the START treaties, in which the number of nuclear weapons was reduced, in fact, dramatically by 90%. 90% of the nuclear weapons have been destroyed. Because wisely, the United States and the Soviet Union said, I mean, wait a minute, we have 50,000 more nuclear weapons each. This is stupid. I mean, we're just demolishing the planet. So let's both reduce down to around 10,000. So long debate, long discussion. And this came out thanks to the scientists. The Soviet scientists and the Western scientists were talking to one another, because science, that's what they do. They've always done that. So science is naturally international. I would say even in antiquity, the beginning of science, it's tied to people who are traveling, going from culture to culture and developing idea by exactly listening to the other. And I would say that more in general, intellectual paid for trying to look things more from a wider angle. And from a wider angle, obviously, cooperation is better than confrontation. And obviously, not going to war is better than having a war. So maybe this is to be too pretentious, but there's wisdom in just saying cooperate.
Be more curious.
Be more curious. Listen to the other side. Understand the different perspective. And if you look at things at the other perspective, what the Kennedy did when they avoided the Third World War in Russia is simply to look at the perspective from Russia and say, wait a minute, we put our nuclear weapons under their nose in Turkey. I mean, now we're telling them not to do that. Well, okay, they're right. So let's take away our missiles from their nose and then ask them to take away them. And it works. Whether it is in the courtyard of a boys' school where two boys are fighting or at the United Nations, I would say.
So if you could change the world in any way, how would you change it?
If I was a emperor of the planet?
Yeah, or a
total
magician,
power?
wave a magic wand.
Or a magician. I would add a single law to everybody, actually, And the law is the following. Every 30 years, the wealth of the planet is taken away and redistributed to all human citizens in equal parts.
A reset.
Reset. Every, 30 years or 50 years, whatever. Not disallowing inequalities, fine. We work hard and live better. But you know that every once in a while, we start from zero, we re-equilibrate. Wouldn't it be wonderful? It, by the way, would totally eradicate misery, extreme poverty, difference between countries, and there would be much less reason for trying to prevail.
You might be a bit miserable if you're very rich and you get all your wealth taken away.
Exactly. So the question is, can we make a very small minority a little bit miserable and the huge majority much happier?
That's where your philosophy comes.
Well, that's what I would like if I could do. But of course, I know that I am not a magician, that this is not going to happen because the rich people are going to say no and they have the power. But I think it would be good to keep in mind that that's what majority of people would like to do. But reality is different. So reality is one step at a time, a little compromise at a time. And so a little bit of more justice, a little bit of more people suffering, a little bit of less war, whatever, in that direction, I'm happy.
And just finally, do you think in another 20 years, we'll know that white holes exist? Or is it different?
Oh, I have an answer to that. On Monday, I'm usually sure that this is the case. Tuesday, I have doubts. Friday, I said, no, that cannot be. But the next Monday, again, I'm faithful.
Carlo Rovelli, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks
you
for
very
your
much.
time.